Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this February 5th, 2025 meeting of the Wildwood School Building Committee. Seeing that we have a quorum, both for those that are here in person in attendance, as well as those joining remotely, call this meeting to order and looking for a roll call tonight.
Yes, sir. Dr. Brand?
Here.
Paul Ruggiero?
Here.
Diane Allen?
Here.
John Holloway? Greg Bendel?
Here.
Kevin Kyra? Kate Bissell? Stacy Scott? Christine Holleran?
Here.
Christine Murray? Dennis Kelly?
Here.
Eric Schlegel?
Here.
Judy O'Connell?
Here.
Paul Melorani?
Here.
David Ragsdale?
Here.
Nick Golden? Stephen Turner? Marianne Galezzo?
Here.
Michael Camosio?
Here.
Craig Miner?
Here.
Christine Pendergast?
Here.
Justin Couchet?
Here.
Here, and myself. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the second item this evening is the approval of minutes from the January 29th, 2025 meeting. Looking for a motion to approve. So moved. Second. First and a second. With that, roll call, please.
Glenn Brand?
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero?
Yes.
Diane Allen?
Yes.
Greg Bendel?
Yes.
Christine Holleran?
Yes.
Dennis Kelly?
Yes.
Eric Schlegel?
Yes.
Judy O'Connell?
Yes.
Paul Melorani?
Yes.
David Ragsdale?
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo?
Yes.
Michael Camosio?
Yes.
Craig Miner?
Yes.
Christine Pendergast?
Yes.
Justin Couchet?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Item number 3 is the approval of invoices for warrants number 21A and number 21B. Julie?
Yep, good evening. Warrant Article 21A is for SMA's OPM basic services for schematic design in the amount of $3,750. And Dennis Kelly with the recommendation from the Finance Working Group.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant article 21A in the amount of $3,750.
Seconded.
The motion and a second, discussion? Seeing none, we have to do separate roll call, right?
Yes.
So roll call, please.
Sure. Glenn Brand?
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero?
Yes.
Diane Allen?
Yes.
Greg Bendel?
Yes.
Christine Holleran?
Yes.
Dennis Kelly?
Yes.
Eric Schlegel?
Yes.
Judy O'Connell?
Yes.
Paul Melorani?
Yes.
David Ragsdale?
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo?
Yes.
Michael Camosio?
Yes.
Craig Miner?
Yes.
Christine Pendergast?
Yes. The second.
Justin Couchet?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Next up is warrant article number 21B for Doran Whittier's basic services schematic design in the amount of $53,900. Followed by their designer amendment 3 for site survey in the amount of $5,604.50 for a total warrant article in the amount of $59,504.50. Dennis Kelly with the recommendation from the Finance Working Group.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant article 21B in the amount of $59,504.50 for Doran Whittier.
Thank you.
Seconded.
We have motion and a second, discussion?
Hearing none.
Seeing none, roll call.
Glenn Brand?
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero?
Yes.
Diane Allen?
Yes.
Greg Bendel?
Yeah.
Christine Holleran?
Yes.
Dennis Kelly?
Yes.
Eric Schlegel?
Yes.
Judy, you seconded. Paul Melorani?
Yes.
David Ragsdale?
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo?
Yes.
Michael Camosio?
Yes.
Craig Miner?
Yes.
Christine Pendergast?
Yes.
Justin Couchet?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries.
All right.
Vivian.
great.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Vivian. This is Judy O'Connell. I did not second that. Not that I wouldn't have seconded. I certainly would have, but I didn't.
So I don't know who did second. I just want to make sure the minutes are accurate.
I apologize. I thought I heard your voice.
No
and
problem. Nope.
I call your name, you would say yes?
I would have said yes, but I just wanted to make sure you had an accurate record.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think it was Marion. I think
It was Marianne. I apologize. Thank you for that correction.
Good.
No problem.
I think we're all set to move on. Then item number 4 tonight is a design update. Just to bring to the attention of everyone here, Bryce is here from Dora Whittier, Lee Dorr and Ronnie. They're joining us remotely tonight, but they are here in the meeting just to make sure that everyone's aware. We turn it over to Ronnie.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. So the design team is currently in the process of updating the site plan based on feedback that we received from our site and landscape working group and at the recent abutters meeting. So on the screen here, you'll see some notes that we have included as we're updating the site plan, and this is where we're going to focus on improving the buffer and the distances of the different amenities on the site away from property lines wherever possible. And for example, we're going to look at relocating that upper grade playground for grades 3 to 5 from its current location to where the 2 U8 fields are currently shown. This would likely reduce that area to 1 U8 field, but then have playgrounds and hopefully space for the basketball courts to maintain those amenities on site. Those are the items that the staff and principals have identified as really important to try to keep together from a supervision standpoint, and also to improve security so that students would not have to necessarily cross that access road to reach the playground. So right now that proposed location would allow for the students to easily get to the playground as well as the open green space during recess. We'll also be looking to improve the buffer and distances in general for the property lines, especially where they abut, they're at the abutters. You know, whether it's by the trees or some acoustical separation. So we'll be looking at some different options to improve the buffer for sight lines as well as acoustics for the abutters. And that was in response to some of the comments we heard at last week's meeting. We are also looking at potentially locating the grades K2 playground north towards that open green space as well, for a similar reason of allowing the adjacency of the playground with the open green space. And so we're exploring that. That is, you know, something to potentially improve that experience for those grade levels, but we're going to look at the space and the turnaround. Another aspect is that bus turnaround and trying to pull that slightly away from the property line. Right now it's pretty close to that location. So we're just looking to make some of these tweaks to help improve the overall site plan. We'll also be meeting with public safety officials, fire and police. That meeting is currently being, I think it's scheduled for next week, or tentatively scheduled for next week. And so we're hoping to get some feedback from them as well. So
we do have that confirmed for next Tuesday. I think it is with police and fire.
Ronnie, can I ask a question for the potential location of the grade K through 2 playground? Is there any concern over them crossing the bus loop lane, or would it be programmatically different hours where they would be utilizing that field and when the buses would load?
Great question. Thanks, Vivian. So there will be gates in 2 locations to prevent traffic from using the access road. The buses would not be using those roads anyway during school hours. It would just be during drop off and pickup. But otherwise, that access road around the north and west side of the building would be blocked off for any sort of traffic. And so we'll be working on those exact locations. Bryce, maybe you could just point, so the area just past the delivery, the loading dock area, is the location for potentially one of the gates, and then the other location would be just past the parking for that pre-K entrance. So that area around the pre-K playground as well as the grade K2 playgrounds would be blocked off during the day for security.
So Ronnie, it's Diane Allen here. So if a parent has to come to the school for a sick child, has to pick someone up, are you saying, how will they be able to enter the school? I mean, will they have any problem or anything? Or they're just going to go by that front door?
They would use the front door. But then depending on the situation, the setup with the nurse is that there is an emergency, there is a door directly off the nurse's suite as well, depending on, and that would be used on a case-by-case basis, but it is to allow for any sort of emergencies where you wouldn't want a student traveling through the building to be picked up.
And I see where you have located grade 3 to 5 there. And you know, I see the trees as a buffer and so on and so forth, but I see parking there. We're not worried. I mean, that Salem Street can be very busy at times in Ballardville, especially where it comes around the corner. Is there going to be a fence there at all separating?
So we'll be exploring that as part of the security when we relocate it. The intent is that playgrounds would have some sort of security feature around them to help keep the students within certain areas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ronnie, can I ask another follow-up question? So that you mentioned there's some access gates on the north where they would enter, where the bus loop would also utilize the deliveries would utilize the same loop, correct?
Correct. But they would only go up to the loading dock area and then exit back out onto Ballardville.
Yeah, to back there and then exit, and then where they would need to make a loop though, so they would have to use that same bus loop, especially if they're a larger delivery.
They're gonna be
trucks.
heading in and then backing out. They'd be heading into the building or back into the building. That's the.
Typically backing in because of the loading dock.
Yeah, backing in because of the loading dock and then hopefully going back out
Taking
the
it right
same
now.
and not using that
Yeah.
lower loop where the playground area is.
Where, can somebody show me the loading dock?
Right under the word playground in the top left, right here.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
and so I guess my only concern is how often are you having deliveries, especially with kitchen, food, paper products? I don't know, I have a little bit of a concern of like loading delivery trucks coming in while they're coming in during school hours and now kids are running across to the playground.
But they're not gonna be able to, because the fence off is gonna happen right after that loading dock. They're gonna
Correct.
be able to get to that.
Okay, that's where a gate is.
Where
I
that
thought,
red arrow is at the top,
yeah,
that would be where a gate would be.
that's where the gate was. Okay, I thought it was a little, okay.
And we also try to have deliveries made before school starts or at the end of the day.
Right,
Mainly
but
before school starts.
even before school or after school, you still have a grouping of kids coming, and if they arrive early or after school is when my daughter likes to play in the playground more than during school. Don't know why, but that was my question. But if there's a gate separating it, then a little better at it. Okay.
How wide is that piece of pavement of the loading dock to, like, say, the curving across from it?
So we have, as far as the bus loop itself is at minimum 20 feet wide.
Okay.
Right? So then we have the additional, sort of
So
approach
maybe 40 feet
into,
or so?
so it could be,
Okay.
so.
I just want to make sure there's not for a truck to maneuver in there and we don't create a bottleneck there.
And certainly there could be opportunity if, once we do sort of the turning radius studies of all of the, the buses and as well as the large, trucks, we'll be able to examine if we need to make any sort of adjustments into the circulation pattern.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the biggest truck that I've seen at the high school is that Thurston Foods there, and I think
Yeah.
that's only a 40-foot trailer. I don't think you've ever come over the 53. So that should be able to pull up, back out and swing around.
Okay. Thank you.
And as Bryce mentioned, we will be continuing to study some of those turnarounds, the radiuses, the trucks backing in and out. The other potential we did hear a comment about was parking for food service and custodial staff because the location for their spaces are in the back of the building. So we'll explore that from a security standpoint as well, if it makes sense to add parking there, or if now that we know we have shifted the building south, once we had more information about the wetlands that was on that southwest side of the property, and we were able to shift the building south, so that also gives us some additional space for improving the circulation on the north side of the building. So we'll continue to study that. So just to keep us moving, the other thing I wanted to mention was that we've also had a meeting with Dennis Ingram, who's the athletic director, and then also Brett Sawin from the rec department. And that was helpful for us. We wanted to make sure that we understood any needs on the site, because we know that the rec department does use the school sites, and that the fields are also shared with the high school and the other teams. And we were able to confirm with Brett Sawin that the U8 field, as long as we have one field, that's a U8 size, that would work well for the programs that they plan to have at this site. The loss of the high school baseball diamond and the high school soccer field, that would start approximately in the fall of 2027. And that's a bigger impact for the high school teams to try to identify alternate locations for those fields in town. Somewhere in the future would be ideal, but as we know, 2027, we're going to blink and it'll be here. So, it is something for consideration for the town to, look at and work with the district to see if there's any opportunities around town for additional fields.
Ronnie, with the 3 playgrounds around the building, obviously you're trying to move some of them, but they're still close to neighbors' property lines. Would it be better to have all, I believe we've brought up in the past, the Entile field, the Entile Park has every grade level in one area. Could you pull that to where you're saying locate the grade 3 and 5 and have one large playground, yet, because the noise would be in front of the building instead of near the neighbors, and that may help buffer some of the noise and disturbance to that neighborhood in the back?
Sure. So that definitely could be considered. However, especially when you think about the youngest students, the pre-K and K students, often they could be at recess and they need to, a staff member might have to run a student in to use the bathroom or something like that. And so they really prefer to have the younger students as close to the building as possible. And the other part of that is during recess, for example, if lunch has grades 2 and grades 5, when they're on the playground, to have all of those students, that would be about 300 students on the playground at one time, it's a lot harder to manage. And ideally, they would want to have them on separate playgrounds so that they could help, that would help with monitoring the students to a manageable size.
With the 2 playgrounds so close to the building, when we start talking about the HVAC and the condenser units, where would those be around the building? Because it doesn't look like there's a lot of opportunity. Would those be on the roof?
So typically the equipment would end up being on the roof whenever possible. So we would keep that off the ground.
I have a question that maybe Glenn will not be able to answer. How long is recess?
The lunch combined, right now, Diane, is 4.
Recess is 20 minutes.
20 minutes, and then lunch is 20 minutes, right?
30.
30, sorry. 30.
And so how many lunch periods are we looking at? Ronnie, do we remember?
We have 3.
So it's 3 lunch periods, 20 minutes of recess, so we're talking an hour a day?
With,
Roughly?
yeah, actual use, there'd be more transition time in and out, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, I was just trying to get it overall so that people understood like durations of time.
In talking about it the other day, we were saying we're looking for 2 hours.
Okay.
Between all 3 lunch sessions.
Okay.
Lunch is 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Times 3, so 90 minutes for lunch.
But just to clarify the answer, not 2 hours of full-time use outside by all three, but just from the
No,
very
Span
start,
of 2
We
hours.
wanted to stagger
Yeah.
the lunches, because we don't want.
but the equivalent of approximately an hour for active use outside.
Thank you.
Ronnie, if I could just add before we move on from site, I just wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of the design team to thank the abutters who participated in the meeting with us last week, because their information, whether they're, for the project or against, is really helpful from a planning exercise for us to be able to position the project in a right way that we're being good neighbors to everybody. So a lot of, the feedback that we heard are, actively being engaged right now with revisions to the site plan. And it's a process. We're going to keep coming back through different iterations, and we'll come back to the abutters to see, if we listened well and, the efforts that we've made, if it's, satisfying some of the challenges that we heard.
Thanks, Lee. So we could move on to the floor plan updates. So the design team is reviewing the performance space right now. That's been something we've been looking at greater detail. It's a different space, being that it's accessible from both the cafeteria and the gymnasium, and we want to make sure that we're looking at accounting for the curtains, the stage lighting, providing backstage areas for use from either side. And so one of the things that we did to help improve that is more or less we kind of squared off the stage at the cafeteria side. If you recall, it used to follow the angle, that green space that you see, it was on an angle. And we found that to help provide access from an accessibility standpoint, as well as, the backstage areas and a viewing sight lines, that squaring it off made better sense. And so we have started to explore that. We'll be meeting with the director for music to continue this conversation with him as well next week. And we'll provide an update at that point. But, doing this has also helped us to look at confirming some of the seat counts when the space is set up for lunch, as well as when it's configured for assemblies. So we'll continue to review that. Next slide.
I'm sorry, I have a question on that last. The boys' toilet and the girls' toilet, can somebody explain to me how you enter and leave that area, right above the kitchen, that purple square? Is that one entrance
Yes,
for
right now,
both the boys' room and the girls' room?
yeah, it's a split entry, right? So it's an alcove, yes, alcove going in,
But
where
elementary kids.
in this instance, yep, and then it would split to boys and girls.
Oh,
It's
brother.
definitely something you can bring up and say that you don't like.
Say it again?
It's definitely something you can bring up and say you don't agree with. It's just.
Yeah.
Under the.
Unless you have an adult there monitoring people entering that area, I'm not sure that elementary kids are gonna stay in the boys' room, boys in the boys' room and girls in the girls' room.
Yeah.
I bought that center wall, the wet wall, all the way out further. You can divide it by two separate doors. And then at least coming out of the hallway.
I think it may work fine for adults, but.
It's, there's a first pass
Sure,
some time, and we've done it on, other similar projects. It's a way of also, as far as visibility goes too.
Yeah.
There's a staff member close nearby that they can at least monitor what's happening in the bathroom. But again, this can be tailored in a way that suits the school's needs, so.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul, 100%. That is not going to work. And I got to voice my disapproval of that. I think you guys got to work on that design a little bit more.
We'll take a look at that. That's not a problem.
I'd be curious, if any of our school principals or staff have thoughts on that, since they have direct experience working with elementary school kids.
So, excuse me, so for me as a kindergarten teacher, I've only been in a building where there's preschool and kindergarten. And we actually always take our children to the bathroom. I stay outside of the girls' room, my assistant stays outside the boys' room. So there's always an adult with them. So I'm really not sure how the upper grades do it.
We don't in the upper grades, at least in the intermediate building, we don't take them by class. They're independent. They sign out, they go to the bathroom, they come back. We actually saw this in one of the schools that, at least one of the schools that we visited. It looked like a great, it was actually more spacious and it didn't seem to take up as much. It didn't seem to lose so much space. So I think in seeing this, we just assumed it was sort of the new way. Our bathroom doors right now are pretty close together, and I've never had a girl go in the boys' room or a boy go in the girls' room. So I'm thinking that once we teach the kids explicitly which bathroom they're comfortable using, or the one they're supposed to be using, that's the one that they will use.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of it is that it is open, so you can hear what's happening in the bathroom. You know, kids who goof off, they splash water. We try and keep the sinks closer to the front door or to the entrance. So when you walk in, typically the sinks are on your wing walls so that you can see them, and you can see when they're really goofing off when they're in the stalls. There's only 2 stalls and a handicap typically, depending upon the code. And yeah, at first they're like, they giggle and they look and they're like, ah, but after a while they get used to it. They don't even look at each other. They just go in, they do their thing, and come back out. But I can understand from any, both perspectives.
Yeah, Ronnie, this is Greg. Just my 2 cents. I prefer to see 2 doors there, separate and distinct with proper signage. I would prefer that.
Yeah. And I think common sense would dictate that we'd have 2 entrances off the hallway.
Yeah, so we'll definitely take a look at that. We can, like I said, it's a preference. Different communities have approached it differently. And, the intent of this specific toilet area is just for use from the cafeteria. It was for allowing students to use it when they're using the cafeteria so that they didn't have to travel back towards the academic wingings. But, like I said, we'll definitely reconsider the layout of that. That's the preference.
Also a single stall. I see there's also a single stall toilet nearby the cafeteria. Is that for adult use or child use as well?
So that one is, adult, but we could designate one as an adult, one as a student toilet room. Right now, we're just trying to carve out the space to make sure we have them around the building. Next to the gang toilets, closer to the academic wing, we have at least 1, if not 2, toilets as single-user toilets as well.
Okay.
And would those?
Not to belabor this, but the other thing is this is the common area where the gym is going to be used by outside groups. So it's more than students being escorted. This is outside groups going into those bathrooms as well on weekends and nights. So I don't know if that would be a little different experience as well. So I know we've all made comments, but where it is the public area and a lot more people, I think that has to be looked at a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, but that makes me lean towards maintaining this, because that's what you see in like malls and.
Right.
I don't have a problem with adults finding their way into the right restroom.
Yeah.
I think it's the elementary kids, the goofballs. I think might find their way in the wrong area.
Christine?
I guess question for Dr. Brand is, where do we stand with same-sex bathrooms as a community or as a school?
Yeah, it's a fair question. So we're going to have to continue to monitor guidance and take a look at this in all of our schools as we go forward. Things are changing rapidly, as we know right now. So that's something that we just have to be mindful of. That holds true in all of our bathrooms right now, in all of our school facilities.
And that's partially the question, the reason for my question, if it was a single stall, that if it is, then
right, it can be
any sex can use, it's a gender neutral.
Yep.
That solves all the problems. Right?
Exactly, and that way, depending on, it could also be your comfort level,
Right.
not necessarily just gender related.
Right.
So last week we also had a follow-up meeting with Mary Palin. She's the director of food services to review the kitchen layout. This, really the layout was very close. Mary really knew what she wanted from day one, so it was great to be able to lay this space out. And the biggest change that we made was that we went from having 3 serving lines to 4 serving lines, just to be able to move students more quickly, being that the lunch period is so short. A lot of students take lunch or go through the hot lunch line. So having that ability to move students through quickly so that they can have time to actually eat their lunch is the goal. And the other piece was just relocating the access door. So you see a door that's on the bottom of the kitchen, or bottom of the page, if you will. And that was just located so that the staff would be able to easily exit out and have access to that servery area. Regarding project interiors, we started to show you some of the interior sketches. So as we were working on the stage area in the cafeteria, we just have a couple of renderings that we wanted to share. This is a view looking south. It shows that connection between the cafeteria space with the admin on the lower level and then the library above it with that staircase that is communicating between the 2 levels. This next image is showing the view towards the stage. You could see the table setup that's selected. This was a direct result of visiting other schools and seeing these types of tables used. It's great because it's a convertible table that converts into a bench seating for when you have performances. And the advantage is that it allows for the flexibility of using the same furniture for 2 different uses. And it won't require pushing tables to the back of the space for single chair setup. You can obviously still use single chairs that would be used in the gymnasium when there are, a large gathering. And so the chairs are available if there was additional seating that was desired, but the intent is to try to use these table bench combo. And like I said, it was used at other schools that we saw when the group toured different schools, and they really appreciated the flexibility of this furniture. And this is a view just looking back towards the kitchen area. You can see the quiet rooms in the far right, and then just the large curtain wall is bringing nature into the space, and then we would use features to help darken the space when a performance was happening.
Yeah. Do we still have that same amount of glass that we had when we saw the last?
No, so we have reduced it. You'll be able to see it better on the exterior when we get to it.
Okay, thank you.
And then this was just the last view of it's a view towards the north from the 2nd level balcony. And we're just going to continue following up with the user groups to develop these spaces. And then we'll move to the exterior. And since Bryce is in the room today, I'm going to turn it over to Bryce to take you through the exterior imagery that was developed.
Thank you, Ronnie. So literally going back to the drawing table, based on the comments from our last meeting. So it's just trying to shift gears and take in all those comments that were brought to the table. And a few things that I was just trying to study from the overall aesthetic, using sort of proportions, rhythm, as well as materiality to help sort of, look at a different iteration to the exterior of the building. So before I kind of jump into the building itself, a couple of materials that are introduced that are different from last time that you had saw. So was looking at a masonry stone block as sort of a base element, as well as cast stone, where it could be used as a architectural banding, sort of water table. Also to precast concrete could also be used as a paneling sort of feature, aesthetic along the building, as well as you'll see the brick veneer red that was in previous iterations and tying it over here. So looking at here, I've got the similar perspectives as previously shown, starting with the bottom left, that southwest view will kind of take you through. So this is the classroom wing side, with the lowest level being the pre-K, and then the next grade grouping, first and second, and then third, fourth, fifth, top level. So I utilized that masonry stone block along the base. It's a kind of a lighter beige color, which kind of spans all along the first floor. That also kind of creeps up to the second floor of the classroom wing. From there, then there's a transition of a cast stone sort of decorative element to transition from the block stone to then the masonry brick, which was the red banding, still using the same similar color for red. And then as you get towards sort of the top of the building, using that banding of cast stone sort of profile to kind of cap off to the roof. So between the classrooms or at the ends, bookending, you'll see sort of the large similar curtain wall. This is identifying the stair shafts. And in this case, it was introducing the precast panel as an accent, sort of to signify that sort of unique, large sort of volume inside that space. And as well as, kind of breaking up the rhythm between the two classrooms. It's just, brick veneer with that stone at the bottom to help kind of break up that rhythm. You also notice too, there's a difference you'll see on that south perspective, right below the stair, is a little bit different of the pre-K entry going into the building. So those canopy columns, we were looking at changing it from glulam to using the stone base as well as the brick above to the canopy. And that will be sort of a similar gesture as we move around the building. Once you kind of move east on that south perspective beyond, is sort of the lower portion, which is the double height space above on the second floor for the STEM in the library. In this case, at the lowest level is a continuation of that stone block with the band of the cast and then brick above. And then you'll see sort of that gesture of the precast panel, creating a rhythm from the stairwells. And then as you get, east to the building below the curtain wall, you'll see that. You also see on the right side is also a hint of the entry canopy. And actually, I'm going to move to the next slide so you can see that.
Right, so I just had a question on that last slide. I'm sorry.
Sure.
On the south perspective, these are great. Right up with that, okay. On the south perspective, towards the classrooms down at that end of the building, it strikes me that the windows are too small and too few for classrooms. Is it too early to start thinking about that stuff, or is this just a conceptual idea?
No, well, so actually the classrooms average roughly have 3 windows per classroom.
Okay.
The lowest level is a little bit, have 2 just because of the placement of some of the interior space that's going on in for the program.
Okay.
So again, this is sort of a first pass of the amount of area of window openings there are. So, but classrooms are roughly averaging 3 windows.
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as a lot of light coming into the classrooms if you're having 2 windows in the lower classrooms. And I know this is very initial. I just want to get that out there. I want to see these rooms. We went through all the trouble of creating a shape that all the classrooms get light. I would like to see these classrooms flooded with outside light in a safe way.
Yeah, and that's gonna be, sort of as we move forward, as far as the development, we'll look at daylighting. We're gonna have part of our energy modeling to calculate how many foot candles that we're gonna actually get in the building, because obviously we wanna, limit the amount of, we've got LEDs that we're, looking at for the inside, so this is gonna be an evolution, so.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Throw that out there.
that's a great point, though. Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to combine the two windows and make a larger, one singular opening that allows a little bit more filtered light in?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and when we move forward, you'll see, sort of that next iteration, of that elevation. So, yeah, there's definitely opportunity for that. So, looking at the southeast perspective, looking into the main entry, so the biggest change here again is the actual canopy itself, where it actually extended out a little bit further south and east, for the use of providing some additional coverage in inclement weather, as well as becoming more of a focal point of entry into the building. You'll see a glimpse, and I'll go back to this side. We see east perspective of the cafeteria, bottom right. See the biggest changes where we had the canopy overhang originally at the top, which we brought it down about halfway. So to kind of, again, deal with inclement weather, where we're going to be queuing students, trying to get as much activity here, and trying to serve many purposes, to also respond to landscape.
I have one other follow-up question to the windows. Are the lower level or all of the windows operable windows or curtain glass windows?
So the administration classroom, currently there are some operable windows. It's a question on whether or not the school wants to proceed forward with that. We do have limitations of how much opening that we can put in, but it's a discussion of what the school would like to do, as far as also too with public safety, how they, want to view the windows. So, but yeah, that's all on the table.
There's another thing is, as we talk about the windows, anytime there's an operable window, and with the type of systems we're talking about, can change the humidity, and we could start sweating off these systems. So as you transition into this new technology, operable windows actually can create an adverse situation. These buildings are designed to bring a ton of fresh air. So every operable window, most operable ones, I believe, can only open 4 inches anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think we have to put a lot of thought to that, because if somebody opens a window, we could change the whole atmosphere of that air handler running that area, or the unit, I should say, running that area. So I think, as you're saying, that we're really going to have, as a group, to decide that. I think there could be some emergency type escape windows on the first floor, but that would open the whole window. But if every classroom starts opening windows, we rarely will lose control of this building.
That's an accurate statement. We also do have lead points that are associated with that. That, we'll look at when we're doing the whole lead process to see if it's something that will turn the tides one way or another. I mean, lead silver is where code is at this moment. So we're aiming for that. But it is definitely something that we need to look at.
Yeah, in a building that we're talking about only cooling to 76, once people start up windows and you start losing control of that, that's my concern, but it's definitely a give and take.
I'll just add, I toured a building, I think it was in the beginning of last school year through the MSBA project. It was a new school in the western part of the state. I forget exactly the name. That was actually one of the things on the tour that they talked about, that the school administration talked about, is they recognized that they needed to be more clear around staff use of windows, because it was doing exactly what you're saying, throwing off the internal balance of, you said it better, but the temperature and the humidity, and that's certainly something that they came to realize in about less than a year of their occupancy. So.
Yeah. I would like to just say that I'd like to compliment the new design here. I like the lower canopy look. I think it really adds to the school, and I really like that design. I also like the pillars resting with the, I'm assuming that looks like precast on the bottom of them. I like that effect as well. So very happy with that look, very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Diane said. The thing that struck me the most about this when I first saw it was how much I appreciated that canopy drop. Not only because I think it creates actually a more useful space underneath, but I think it lowers the profile of the building a little bit. It brings the scale down a little bit more to small people. It maintains that curtain wall of glass without making that wall itself overwhelming by breaking it up. I really like that. I wasn't really sold because I did think that at one point in time that cafeteria entrance basically overwhelmed the rest of the entrances to the school, but that cafeteria side with the big canopy. And now by bringing that down and then by re-emphasizing the main entrance by pulling it out, I think that scaling together to me like really does it for me. Like I really like the way that looks. I think that's really a great, to me those changes made a world of difference in how I
Does it
feel.
look like an airline terminal?
Yeah, I really do.
Appreciate that.
Emory Express.
No, this is great. This one, thank you.
I do have one thing, you know, in the front entry.
Anything more?
I love the building. But on the front entry, and it may be just the view we're looking at, is there a way to like, that center column I'm looking at, could it be cantilevered between the other four columns, so really open so that you know that that's where you walk in? Right now with that one in the corner, it breaks it up a little, but if you cantilever across and everything was, you know, from steel or whatever, you could really open up that front and make an entry point.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dennis. Yeah, I think there's, you know, plenty of opportunity that I can work with our structural engineers to really hone in that sort of circulation coming into the building. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity.
But thank you for everything you guys have done.
Yeah, no, I echo that because I think then it'll make more of a presence and an entrance versus kind of a little bit segregated.
All right, so hold on. All right. Behind the curtain.
I like this next one better. Just to be.
So as part of this iteration, we're also looking at still the use of the idea of bringing in color to the elementary school. So in this case, again, from what I kind of previously mentioned as far as proportion and rhythm with the materials, where we could bring that accent color, you know, whether it's part of the masonry, brick, you know, could be an offset of color in precast stone. But here is just sort of a gesture of potentially bringing in color. And again, you know, also establishing, you know, sort of some rhythm and, you know, some purpose to it. So.
I like the added punch of color, especially since this is keeping in mind that it's an elementary school. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the columns being that blue, but around the windows, giving that punch of color, I definitely can appreciate.
That's the feedback that I want, right?
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not
putting it
I'm
out
not
there.
sold on the color blue selection, but I know that this is based on whatever is, you know, gonna be available.
Blue. We're
It's
gonna
gotta be,
we're gonna
it's
get
gotta be like
color.
the
That's where the way
yeah.
right?
Exactly.
It's gonna be perfect.
Exactly. The right shade of blue.
The right shade of
I
blue.
We're paying for CMYK.
Yeah.
Diane?
I've got to say that I'm really a traditionalist. 57 years living in this town, and I am really a traditionalist. I love our new buildings that are currently going up, and I really like the previous one. You know, I get it that, you know, you're trying to be creative, and I think you did a wonderful job tonight in bringing us this stuff, these options to look at. But you know, the blue in there just is not something that I see as singling it out as an elementary school, because it's so different from all the other schools that we have in town. And I like option 4 because it tends to blend in more with our current buildings around the town. I really like option 4, and that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Christine?
I echo Vivian's sentiments. I really like the introduction of the blue. This is the best version of using color that we've seen so far. Just the pillars are the only ones that I would put in the traditional brick, the way you have it in option 4.
David?
So I think I'm also with Vivian and Christine, that I love the splashes of color. And I think that there can be some play about exactly what shades and so forth, that we're not gonna get there. Also, that I prefer at the front, the pillars, I also like the tradition, keeping those, the red brick rather than having color there. I did want to ask something, if we can go back a slide or two and look at the front entrance. Is that, like, when I look at this, and I do like overall, that I like these designs, I think that this is really good work. But one thing I see here is you sort of have this entrance and then almost like this other little cube next to it. And then next to that, another piece, which is the cafeteria coming out. And I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of harmonize this a little bit more together rather than to just kind of see almost like 3 separate pieces, which is kind of what I see when I look at this rendering. And so I'm not exactly sure how that would go, but that's one of my thoughts, that there's a little bit of discontinuity kind of here looking from left to right.
Yeah, that you're kind of not sure which is the entrance, because it's kind of like those houses that have the front door and the side door on the same plane and right next to each other. You're like, which one?
Right, it looks like there's like this special little room next to it, kind of coming out of the building, rather than being part of the whole.
Yeah, so what you're seeing, that lower sort of boxed area is one of the flex classrooms, right? So what I did was I still kept the same sort of masonry stone block, because it's that one volume space. But absolutely the going back to the entry and looking to kind of, another round of that to kind of, zone in on, having that cohesiveness. So yeah, that's.
Or does it make sense to connect the overhangs? Even with a small overhang over the cubicle room there, like bring it down and have an overhang come out and then connect to the other overhang. I'm just throwing it out there, and then that way.
A bigger covered area.
You have a big coverage area, and it could be a good place for, kids to hang out if they're, waiting for something or.
Could limit the light into the room.
Right.
Okay, all right, yeah,
I mean,
that's fair, that's fair.
Throw it out there to limit the light, but I agree that I'd like to see a different treatment of that.
Or at least bring the same kind of treatment you have on the other, bring it onto that room, the square room that's there, so it kind of carries through.
And if you added more of that canopy, you lose the fact when you pull up on which way do I
Where's
walk
the
to the front
entrance?
door.
Yeah.
So as you extend that canopy, where do I go in now? So you want to pick up your kid, your grandparent comes or whatever, you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got sort of 2 points of, so you got bus drop off and then you got, kids, coming in from cars, right? So it's, again, sort of trying to see what's the happy medium, to make that happen, so.
I'll also add that there's, right now you're seeing the site as flat other than for, the vehicles and a couple of figures on the slides right now. So it's missing a lot of the site elements that will be developed once the site plan is more developed. And that will help, I think, with one, bringing down the scale, but also kind of highlighting where the entrance is, where the bus entry is, and kind of differentiating the entrances and guiding people around the site as well. So I think those pieces that you're not seeing right now will at least definitely help some of those aspects when you see all of that put together in these renderings.
And just a question I have, so this blue, this is an actual brick that is solid blue?
They do have glazed brick that's blue, yes, yep. Yeah,
These are not nails?
No, in this case, it could be, a brick, just to stay with the masonry theme.
Okay.
They do have some color in precast panels themselves, so again, it's sort of a gesture to what you could do in that material without having to introduce metal panel. So.
You said metal
There's-
buildings.
There's different varieties of blue and how we can introduce that. And there are 2 slides more that kind of introduce the variety of blue. It could be more subtle or it could be a brighter glazed brick. But the previous one had pebbles that have a blue color. So you see it in the texture, but from a distance, you may not see it as clearly. You would probably see the background color more. But I'll let Bryce continue, but I just wanted to point out there, when we say that we're exploring the blue, there's definitely a range that can be explored. There's also shades that can be explored and materials that can be explored as well.
I like the introduction of blue, just the shade of blue.
I know I haven't been very vocal on this, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like this, bringing the color, and there may be a way to do it with sort of this shocking on the color, and then you find the happy medium for everyone.
Yeah.
But I think that really jumps at me and takes the tradition away. When you go back to the other one, there may be hopefully a panel or something that is a combination, somewhere in between these two, to give you the accent that people are looking for without shocking in your face.
That's what I'm saying, like a different shade, maybe a little softer shade, but yeah.
So again, right, sort of looking at maybe the quantity of this, it's not the whole, width of the elevation of this. area, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Sort of, strategically, maybe it changes, that percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I'm not a big fan of it only because of the middle school fades, but the window framing instead of the block, that's blue. And then you bring color in with keeping the traditional brick. So there's definitely other ways to pull in color and not, like I said, this just these bands just jump out as being bands. But you guys have done an amazing job.
Bryce, I initially really liked number 4, but I totally appreciate trying to bring in the blue. I really like that. In fact, it come across, you have number 5 up there, comes across as red, white, and blue almost to me, which is appealing as well. But I wonder if there'll be a second attempt at the blue. I think some of the feedback you've heard here would almost drive you to come back with another version of this blue. I think there's been some great commentary about the pillars, maybe not, that's not the, but I feel like you have a great second version of this in you. That maybe perhaps would come back.
Yeah.
And I think it was, and I think it was Lee that mentioned, we're 10%, right, of the design, right?
Yeah.
So, as, if we are able to move forward into, DD, it's like you say, another round, at the table to, see that iteration continue and continue.
Yeah,
I look
but
forward to 5A.
yeah, but at the same time, I agree with, I apologize, Eric, I didn't mean to cut in front of you, but I agree with, Greg here. Come back with another option iteration of 5, because I'm kind of putting on my PR hat on, is that's what we're gonna, if that's the direction we're headed towards, that's what we're gonna show to the public, and I don't want it to become all of a sudden a jarring, like I want us to really thoughtfully have a version that we're gonna present as the next iteration to the public as well. Sorry.
I think Paul.
So I'm definitely team option 4. I'm not gonna die on that hill though. If you guys want to put the blue into it, that's fine. I would like to see it just a bit more subtle, okay? Having been on the building committee for the middle school, my one regret is the amount of blue we used on the exterior of that school. And those are metal panels. I understand that there's a difference between that and the glazed brick solves the problem of what that school's gonna look like in 30 years and what that color's gonna look like in 30 years. But the overwhelming thing in my head is that the middle school is secluded. There's nobody there looking at it, okay? I'm thinking about the neighbors who have to look at this. Option 4 for me are all natural muted colors. And I think it's easier on the eye for the people who have to live there and look at the building.
Correct. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not ready to die on this hill. If you guys want to put some blue in it, I kind of like the idea of the speckled blue in the brick. I don't even mind the blue in option 5 if there's a way to make it just a bit more subtle. But I think that you have to take into consideration the people who have to look at that 24 hours a day. Not just us.
Good point.
I just want no, it's somebody else. Something.
No, it's Eric and then Mary Ann is next.
Okay, I guess I wanted to kind of reiterate something I said yesterday, which is I really appreciate this design. I really appreciate how quickly the team responded to feedback, because it's hard to, I mean, we were here a week ago.
Yeah.
And this is a design that came out of,
I was ready to go crazy today.
so, but, so I really, I know that this was not an easy lift, and I know that like, you know, it's like carrying an aircraft carrier at some points when you're down a design hole. So to be able to come up with this in the short amount of time, and I know that some of the feedback you got was after last Wednesday, but some of the feedback you got was later in the week. And to come up with a design like this, and I think, you know, a straw poll, if somebody said it's 4 or nothing, we'd all jump on 4. If somebody said it was 5 or nothing, we'd all jump on 5 and say, we're comfortable, you know, that this is close enough to like full steam ahead. So I really appreciate the team. You, Bryce and Ronnie and Lee for being able to make that pivot. And I think you've heard, I think it was really a successful one. So thank you.
Yeah, I reiterate what Eric's saying. I think Lee knows that I like this design. Kind of you know, sent you a few emails on it. This is great, and I got to tell you, option 4 or 5 is the way to go. And if this committee can give you the direction tonight and put this to bed, and you can tweak this all the way, I think we're in good shape.
This feedback warms my heart on this cold night. And I just want to say, like, there's going to be a lot of iterations coming back on this. And I think I agree, and we all agree as a design team with everything that you said, right? We're going to find that right balance of subtleness with that accent color to make it feel in. But what we were looking for tonight was some, you know, direction, confirmation that we're heading in the right direction. And certainly we have a lot of work to do, and we'll continue to develop this, but really appreciate the feedback.
Thanks, Lee.
Sorry.
So just as far as going forward, I mean, I know that, like Greg already mentioned about like seeing a like a 5.1, a 5A iteration on option 5. So if we are able to see like an iteration on that, or maybe like a few renderings of a few different shades of blue and not having them on the pillars, as I think people have seemed to be in agreement with, would then that be a situation that we feel comfortable putting that in front of the committee for a vote, that we have, you know, a few viable options to actually just take a vote on and select? Would that be our intentions? Yeah.
I'll just throw it out there for me. We're not looking for you to vote on like this is the exterior design. Like, we're comfortable with you guys telling us you're heading in the right direction and we've got some more work to do. And from a pricing standpoint, right, I think we've got the information we need, right, to get through schematic design. We've got some work to do, right, to get all of us comfortable with how we present this to the community, right? So we're going to work through some of these variations on color and how much or how little that is. And we're going to start developing these plans with some, you know, landscape added to it, which is really going to soften the building, right? These are pretty stark images, elevation studies. So we're going to get there. I think we feel comfortable right now that you guys like the direction we're heading, and it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 5, and we'll keep at it.
Great.
Lee, I get a quick question for you. Did we still have the floor to ceiling windows in the cafeteria? Or
So
did
we brought those up from the bottom and we dropped them down from the top. So there's less area, right? And then we obviously dropped the canopy down in between.
Okay, thank you.
Just one thing about voting on an option for exterior of the building. I would like very much to incorporate public input in that, whether it's another neighbor meeting, if we can push out that vote for that long, I really think the neighbors should have some input in what the exterior of the school looks like.
So our goal is to do a community forum towards the end of March. and also doing another butter meeting.
Yeah, that works with the timeline. If
Yeah.
we don't have to make a decision until that point, I would love to hear the neighbor feedback. Because
Yeah,
like
and I
said,
think that's what Lee mentioned, that he
Okay.
doesn't need a vote,
Perfect.
that he's comfortable enough hearing what our direction is, and just to give iterations of it, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
want the public's input, because ultimately, if we're putting this out as a poster or any type of face of this is what the rendering or potential of the new school,
Yeah.
I want buy-in from the community too.
Perfect. Good, good, okay. Thank you, everyone. Construction manager risk update is the next item, item number 5.
Building systems is next.
Oh,
Sorry. It's on the same line.
okay, sorry. Seeing the risk is not next, building systems.
Sorry.
Thank you. So building systems update. Last week, we shared several slides to talk about what the life cycle cost analysis was and that process. We could skip through the first 3 slides here. More or less, it's reiterating information we already shared, just being that all of the systems we proposed are electric, and they're all going to comply with our requirements for additional reimbursement with the MSBA. They'll fulfill all of the LEED requirements that we're looking for, and all of the systems would include air conditioning. Last week, we shared a baseline and then 4 additional options that were studied, and narrowed it down that we would not be pursuing geothermal, and focused on option 1 and option 3. So that's what we have come back with today. We met with a sustainability working group to just kind of review the systems and just see if there were any additional questions. Bryce, you can move to the summary slide. The LCCA, sorry, can you go back one? The LCCA summary, without the federal tax credits, the 2 systems that we're looking at, options 1 and 3, the very last column, you'll see that there would be an instant payback. You wouldn't have to wait for several years before that payback would be realized. And so that was one of the benefits of options 1 and 3. Next slide, please. So this is a comparison of those 2 systems that we're looking at. It's a variable refrigerant flow system, and then the second one is the displacement ventilation system. Both systems will do what we need it to do. They'll comply with everything that we're looking for. So there's no wrong choice. It's just a matter of preference, and there are some additional pros to option 3 as compared to option 1. So we tried to break this down to keep it as simple as possible for everyone to understand. From a maintenance standpoint, option 1 would require, changing filters, and any sort of maintenance would happen in all the spaces, as opposed to option 3, where those maintenance components would really be focused at the roof and then in the mechanical spaces. So it reduces the locations that would require access and flexibility to be able to repair those when needed. From a ventilation standpoint, option 1 provides the ventilation that is required. Option 3 has a slight improvement on the ventilation side as compared to option 1. Option 1 has less outdoor noise, and option 3 has more outdoor noise than option 1. However, similar to the high school, we would have acoustical treatment and visual guards around the equipment, so that it would help redirect the noise up versus out into the air. For option 3, it actually has less indoor noise as compared to option 1, so that's a slight improvement between the 2 systems. The option 1 has no additional initial cost as compared to the baseline, and option 3 would have an additional initial cost of $435,000. However, if you skip over one of the items on the list here, when you look at the life cycle cost savings, so over the 50 plus years of using these systems, although option 3 has a larger initial cost, it actually has a greater life cycle cost savings over the 50 years of $1.4 million. Regarding the equipment and replacement of parts, when you go with option 1, you are getting married to a manufacturer. So anytime you're doing any sort of improvements or equipment replacement or parts replacement, you have to stay with the same manufacturer, as opposed to displacement ventilation, where you can actually, the parts are more free-flowing, so you can use different manufacturers. So you're not married to just one when you need a replacement part. And then last but not least, both systems provide full heating and air conditioning. So as I said, both systems are good options, and it's a matter of preference. So I'm going to turn it over to either Dennis or Michael or Craig, whoever wants to kind of give the opinion after viewing these systems, and give their opinions based on that.
I don't mind speaking. We after looking at everything and talking about everything, we were really looking towards option 3. It offered a lot more flexibility when we're talking about maintenance. We can maintain things like students are in class and we're not in the classrooms trying to do it. You don't have to go to every room. So that helps keep the systems running and running correctly. Improve ventilation. Anytime you get more air exchanges or more fresh air, it's a benefit to everyone. The less indoor noise is obviously more important, but it meets everything we are looking for or are comfortable with. Our staff is used to working with it, because different from the refrigerant flow, that not that we can't work on it, but the other one, it's pushing hot and cold water through the system, and that's what we do here, and that's what our staff is used to. So it's not taking on something that we're not used to maintaining and working on. So there's a lot of benefits from that side of it. The fact that it's not, again, if we were with a VRF system, you're talking about, we buy Mitsubishi, we're stuck with Mitsubishi for life, and if the part's there, that's great. If it's not, we still don't wait for the Mitsubishi part. But the other way, we can substitute parts and keep things running, and it would be seamless to the people inside. So I feel the other discussion we had was some people and people I talked with, I believe Mike Corsia will say it as well, is VRF is really good for buildings that are 50,000 square feet or less. When you get over 50,000 square feet, you're really, it works, but it's not as good as if we went on displacement ventilation. So I think 160,000 square foot building, it makes sense to go with the system that is more proven for that size building.
I also like the fact that there is an additional 5 points for LEED, especially if we're contemplating not having as part of our LEED requirement operable windows. We're going to need those points to ensure that we won't have silver.
I just want to jump in. I agree with everything Dennis said. I think as key points to highlight, it's just reiterating, both of these systems use less energy than the baseline building. So that's where we get the additional LEED points, as Vivian noted, because we're saving that much less energy. But also the life cycle cost, it's going to be cheaper to operate option 3 over the life of this building. And the fact that it's water-based systems means the various heat pump equipment and indoor equipment can be swapped out for similar equipment from any manufacturer that can just work with the parameters we need for the system, as opposed to manufacturer specific.
Well, that refrigerant's changing all the time, so
Yeah.
that could be another thing.
So do we need to,
Vote on this?
do we need to take a affirmative action on this to choose this system?
As long, Craig, are you in agreement?
There's nothing else to comment on.
I think we can knock this out tonight.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to say this, yeah.
Make a motion?
I make a motion to adopt option 3, displacement ventilation SOS heat pumps.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you, everyone. Any further discussion? Anyone online?
No.
All right. Thank you for that. We have a motion. We have a second. Roll call, please.
Glenn Brandt,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galesso,
Yes.
Michael Comosio,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
Justin Couche,
Yes.
and myself, yes, motion carries.
Great, thank you, everyone. Now we're moving on to construction manager risk update. Item number 5.
All right, we are pleased to announce that we received statement of interest from 7 firms for the Wilmington Elementary School project. After careful review, the committee comprised of Eric Schlegel, Paul Ruggiero, Marianne Galezzo, Julie Leduc, and Lee Dorr have recommended the shortlisting of the following firms for interviews: Consigli Construction, Fontaine Brothers, Shawmut Design and Construction, and W.T. Rich. Notifications were sent to these firms on January 21st, providing them with their interview dates and times. The interviews are scheduled as follows: Tuesday, February 11th, 5 p.m., Consigli, 6 p.m., W.T. Rich, Wednesday, February 12th, 5 p.m., Shawmut Design and Construction, 6 p.m., Fontaine Brothers. Ready to get that?
Could
The
you just give
interview-
me that the second date again for Fontaine?
Wednesday, February 12th at 5 o'clock is Shawmut Design and Construction, and 6 o'clock is Fontaine Brothers.
Thank you very much.
The interviews will take place in Town Hall and will be recorded, though not live streamed. A copy of the recording will be made available to the committee shortly after the interviews. These interviews are part of an open meeting, and the committee members are welcome to attend. However, please note that the interviews will be conducted solely by the committee. At the conclusion of the final interview, the committee will deliberate and make a recommendation. A virtual meeting is being scheduled for February 13th to finalize the recommendation. Further details on the virtual meeting will be shared soon. We look forward to making progress on this exciting project and appreciate the continued collaboration of all involved.
I just want to say really, just very briefly, we got the 4 packages in today, and Tommy Donahue at my office was reviewing them for, compliance when I left. So.
Thank you for tweaking that process.
Sure. So when we did the walkthrough, last Monday, the one thing we did tell all of the prospective, firms was that it is an open meeting, and that we would hope that they would respect the fact that they would not attend and watch another interview prior to their interview. So we're pretty good about, we know most of the people that are coming, and they're pretty respectful of that.
Great.
So.
They all know each other and they'll know if there's an opposing member of another team.
Bad amount.
Yeah.
So what the goal is at the end of the first set of interviews that evening, the Ken Lord will email the committee the first 2 videos. Same thing on the second day, so that after we deliberate, we all had an opportunity, hopefully, to watch those before our Thursday evening brief virtual meeting.
That
And I believe Sarah has already sent that meeting invite to everyone for the virtual meeting. Sorry, I know she was working on it.
It's been posted.
It's been posted.
And that, just to clarify, that meeting is at 6 o'clock, right?
The virtual?
meeting.
For the virtual meeting is at 6
On
o'clock.
Thursday, the 13th.
Correct, because at 7 o'clock you have finance committee, so we want to make sure we have time to get that in.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Anything, we're good with that?
Next week's a busy week.
Working group updates is item number 6, starting first with public relations working group.
I'd like to invite Michael Comosio to give the update on behalf of the Public Relations Working Group.
Thank you, Vivian. We met this morning, this afternoon, I should say. We were discussing that we don't have a lot of information to disseminate, as we just, the last week and this week we've gone through various design options, and hopefully we'll be close. We did start discussing the next community forum and what we need to start pulling together. And then SMMA noted they're going to share a list of events that occurred last year so that some of us on the committee can track those same events in town for 2025 and make sure we either have repeat appearances or get information out and maybe have a presence at those years as we lead up towards the September vote. We also discussed the abutter forum. The next meeting, I know we understand we're going to set that up for the end of March, was mentioned early in this meeting, but we want to make sure that that structure helps us in that meeting explain to them the updates were made based on their feedback, and then be able to solicit some more feedback from the group.
Also, just to add is that we've also been working with the creation of a new committee in town. That is the Yes to Wilmington Schools. We do not have a part to play other than providing information to them, as they are now the campaign arm for the yes vote for the school. That has already been, the application has been submitted to town hall. They have a chair as well as a treasurer, and I believe it's been accepted and noted.
One quick thing, February 14th, the new senior center opens. From that point, it's gonna be very crowded. It'll have a lot of attention, a lot of people will interested in it. I don't know how we can coordinate something, maybe to do another on-site presentation, because we'll have, where it's so new and so exciting, it may give a lot more people, and it may give an opportunity to really show a lot of this more seniors this project. So just as a suggestion, February 14th grand opening, 1 p.m.
But that's a great point, and where we're at right now, the project, and these images are so much more informative on the project. I can't remember if I mentioned last time, but I'm also going to plan meetings with school councils and our PTO groups, just to update them on this project over the course of the next few months. But I'm certainly kicking into high gear for informant, so thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Were you looking for attendance on February 14th?
No, I'm just saying for the first 6 months, I gotta imagine that place is gonna be jam-packed with seniors. It's a beautiful place. It has so much to offer. There's a lot of excitement around it. So I think if you were able to get in there, you're gonna get the biggest crowd of seniors because it's so new and exciting.
I'm sure we can get, in touch with Terry. I just wanted to confirm whether or not you were looking for attendance, or if you were looking for any paraphernalia for that day.
No, not on the 14th. I don't think we
No, I
want
think it was.
It's all about the seniors on the 14th.
Yeah, I think our suggestion, Dennis, is more of like, hey, while the excitement is there, get in and make a presentation.
There's an ocean
to
way
them.
right now, let's ride it.
Yeah, give them a presentation of where we are and help get more buy-in. You just had your senior center help us get a new school. No, I love it. Thank you.
Great, okay.
One more time, the interviews are room 9 town hall, is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sustainability Green Design Working Group. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yes, I had a question. Just going back on this, when these meetings that are an open meeting, did someone say that we can watch it through a hybrid, through Zoom? No.
We have the ability
You have to be here in person. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
In person with the recordings for.
Yes.
Yes.
To see it live, you have to be in person.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sustainability Green Design Working Group.
I think we covered that with
All
where
set?
we're at.
So, Site and Landscape Working Group.
Same, we have not met since our last meeting, and we will meet in about 2 weeks with an updated site plan to review.
Great. Thank you. Item number 7, discussion, correspondence, or new items this evening.
Under correspondence, we received numerous emails regarding the abutters meeting. And so what we've done is Sarah has kindly taken all of the questions that were posed in the abutters meeting. She also took all of the questions from the emails that we've received, and she is compiling them into a document that we are then going to sort through to make sure that we don't have duplicate questions, and then be able to, with the design team and the leadership team, provide responses to those. Some of those responses we may be able to pull out and put on our frequently asked questions page, so that people in the community, if they want to know, that they'll be able to find it there. But our goal is to get a response back to all of those in the next few weeks.
And will those questions and responses be shared in document form with this committee, isn't it?
Yes, we can do that. She had just pulled them all out. She was going through the recording and everything she had written down while she was there.
Perfect.
And trying to just kind of put it all together.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
David, did you correct your question?
No, I was actually gonna just say what Paul said, that then we could get a copy of it.
What Paul and I were talking earlier, and he had sent out the email today to get the draft of this presentation. like to, going forward, even if it's in draft form, so we have at least a chance to review this much further in advance of meetings. You know, and you can even put the disclaimer, it's gonna change, but I'd like to see it a little early, so everyone in the committee, because we all work in finding time to review some of this, and or seeing it for the first time here might be difficult.
Was the draft, I believe Tracy sent the first draft last week, but because the turnaround was so close, I understand what you're saying, but they had just finished it this afternoon, so yeah.
So,
I appreciate that Paul reached out and did ask for a copy of it.
I think it helped everyone, and I think it actually helped this meeting tonight, because people, their angst was gone on what the building looked like, and I think it really helped.
And conversely too, I mean, we all are very busy during the day with day jobs, et cetera. If we need to do research on something that we see in here, I don't want to be caught off guard walking into a meeting and seeing a presentation for the first time, okay? So I just want to be thoughtful about this whole process.
No, appreciate that, and I honestly think it was because of this really quick turnaround, and then trying to get, capture all of your thoughts. Our next meeting isn't until, I think it's, I'm skipping ahead for you, but the full meeting would be March 5th, so we'll get plenty of time in between to get you guys the final draft in advance.
And all the imagery too that you intend to present, we'd like to see ahead of time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'd like to bring up a new item. I know I've mentioned it previously, and maybe now it's time to revisit it in renaming the project for public, for public consumption. I could stay as the Wildwood Elementary School project on behalf of the MSBA and all of our documentation submission, but we've kind of gotten to a point where now, as we're moving forward closer to the vote, I feel it's time to maybe publicly change the name so it reads more of a Wilmington Elementary School and not necessarily identifying it as only the Wildwood location, especially since the site we've selected is not Wildwood.
Thanks, Vivian.
Well, the only problem I have with that is I don't want people to think it's a town-wide elementary school, so we gotta figure out some happy in between. Between Wildwood, I don't wanna say north.
Right.
But you see what I'm saying, but I agree with.
So we had this conversation in our leadership meeting. And we talked about that exact comment, we don't want to pin it to one side of town or another.
Yeah.
This is just to name the project for like marketing purposes. It's not to name the building for later on. So the fact that you could use the Wilmington Elementary School as kind of like a generic name. And in the event that the next project happens, in 7, 8, 9 years, once you name this building, I'm gonna make it up because I always like it, the George Hooper Elementary School, right?
Oh, I like.
Right, I know he'll love that.
We go to meet.
But, so your next project is like the new Wilmington Elementary School project versus the Wilmington. So we did have that conversation, and Eric, I don't know if you want to piggyback off of that. but-
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, first of all, I think Vivian's comment is very timely. It is one of the things that I think everybody here has heard push back about, like, why is it called the Wildwood? You're doing these other things. So I think, I would request that we put an agenda item on the next meeting to rename for public consumption this project. And then the interim, I would ask folks, I think calling it the Wildwood Elementary School project is better. Calling it the Wilmington Elementary School project is better than calling it the Wildwood, but maybe people have a better idea. Maybe there's a way we can differentiate it. That lets people know that it's not for the whole town. And maybe if folks have those ideas, they can email it into my office or to Judy, and we can make sure we can get it on.
The only thought I had in naming it the Wilmington Elementary School project is that the whole community is voting on this regardless of what side of town you live in. And whatever is decided here ultimately kind of dictates whatever is done for the next project. So it sets the tone for the next project as well. Not that it'll be identical but it does kind of create that continuity going forward too.
I just want to caution that I don't want people to think we're calling a fast one when we say.
Yeah, but I think a lot of like the presentation materials already, especially during the Fun on the 4th and some of the other things, we had in some of the public forums as well. Doran Whittier dropped the Wildwood, so it's not something that's already hasn't been seen.
There are people out there who don't even know about this project.
Absolutely.
You're right.
Absolutely.
I've been
And they'll
trying ever since this came up to think of a good
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
differentiate it without.
Without pitting one side of town against the
Right.
other.
Exactly.
Side of town. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I get-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's an important point, Paul, that you're bringing up. And I would agree with that. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people aren't aware of what's going on here.
But I would ask if everybody in the committee could think about that, and we've got some time before the next
Yeah.
meeting. To send in your thoughts and your ideas, and I think that would be.
It's phase one or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Phase one elementary.
So-
Yeah, I encourage everyone to just come up with the best ideas you can and send them to Eric and Judy. But I suspect that we aren't going to come up with something better than like the Wilmington Elementary School project, and that it will be incumbent on us in our additional outreach to make sure that when people hear that even if they have a misperception of what the project entails, that as they look further into it, that they will, that the information will be very clear about what in fact the project entails and what its true scope is.
And one quick thing is, the final name of the school will be determined, Glenn shared with us. That's in the, purview of the, school committee. So this is for the project build. This
Yeah.
isn't the final name.
I'm
So-
feeling phase one.
Phase one,
I think
elementary
phase
school
one.
project might do it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I think over the past, say, 3 or 4 months, I think we've done a much better job or a bigger job of sharing information and getting out there. So if people aren't finding out about this project or,
It's kind of on
it's
them too.
it's hard to get them because we've done it so many different ways.
I've been actively dodging it.
The only thing I would say about adding the reference to phase one is if you're trying to sell this to somebody who's reluctant to vote for it because they're afraid of the cost.
Mhm.
They hear phase one.
Right.
Well,
They
that,
assume there's a phase two and they can't afford that either, right? So
I think
I
that
don't know
opens
if
the
you're
door
scaring.
to Eric's creative funding for.
Yeah.
No, I share the same concern as Greg.
Yeah.
I think we want to think carefully about this
Especially-
because to me, phase one implies
There's
something
more.
else that there's more definitely coming as part of this project, which is not the case. I mean,
Especially since, some
We
people
hope
have
it was-
already expressed some concern over the cost and the burden for Wilmington with the Shawshene Tech going into approval for the MSBA as well, so.
like, I mean, I understand that this is part of we are thinking long-term about all the schools, except this is a discrete project. And I think we do need to keep ourselves focused on this particular project. I mean, it's a hard line to thread. I mean, we are
So
trying.
come up with your ideas and email me.
Yeah,
Justin?
I think it wants more thought.
Can I ask a question here? The Thursday meeting, February 13th, that's going to be all virtual. Why are we having that meeting so close?
To recommend the construction manager at risk.
Is that going to be the only thing on the agenda for that meeting?
As in
Yes.
this moment, yes. I don't intend to have anything else.
Nothing else, and that's why it's at 6 p.m.
Correct.
Yeah, we gotta be done because several of us have to be in the.
Yeah, finance committee has a 7 o'clock
FinCom at
meeting.
7 o'clock.
Just,
Okay,
My only comment, Dennis kind of made it, was in regards to renaming the project is, we need to be careful that people aren't gonna associate the new name of the project to the name of the school. And so now we're fielding questions, well, is that the name of the new school? So, you could say Ballardvale Street School, well, then now they're gonna say that's the name of it. So I think it's just gonna be very generic enough that it names the project, but doesn't cause people to say, well, now that's the name of the school, why didn't we get,
Right.
have a say in that? So Dennis kind of,
I think we can clarify that when people ask those questions, especially in community forums, is this the name of the new school? No, eventually the school will be named, it's a school committee decision on what they, choose to name the elementary school.
yeah,
But
but to
that's
that,
why it's like, if
I
we
think
just
that-
keep it generic enough, I feel like it'll kind of avoid those questions to
right,
begin
it
with.
has to stand on its own. with
Yeah.
that further clarification, in a perfect world.
Right.
I understand, this is tricky.
This is
So-
tricky.
Especially as we're getting closer to the vote. That's when, 6 weeks, prior to the vote is when people really start paying attention. And we want to make sure that we're poising ourselves correctly to just have a generic name to reference the project, so it's not giving the impression that it's only the Wildwood, or people are not paying attention because they're not in the neighborhood or community.
Yeah, and I think that just as a reminder, we may have said this before, but the timing, I think, is for those wondering sort of, is this too late? Is this, have we missed the vote on this? And I would argue it's not that, you know, if we can coincide and be comfortable with the committee to come up with this rebranding of this, it can align with the publicity that we're going to take starting in April, once this is formally submitted, that will then sustain the outreach through April, May, June, July up to September. So I don't think it's too late at all.
And no, and that's what the, I apologize, but like, that's what the yes vote committee will also use in their kind of outreach as well.
So, and keep in mind, when we hire our CM at risk, that's part of their job is to help us promote this as well. So they bring their marketing department along with my marketing department and Dorian Whittier's marketing department, and we all craft that message together. And so, you know, you get a whole nother slew of resources to help promote this through the community. And as Vivian said, people don't start to pay attention to it until about 6 weeks before. But keep in mind, 6 weeks before that vote, mid-July, where a lot of people are on vacation. So we got to start that earlier, right? We don't have to start that before school ends so that people are thinking about it throughout the summer, because we're constantly bringing to their attention with Final Fourth and all of that stuff. We're there, we're present. So.
Great. Okay, so we'll add this to the agenda for the next meeting, and appreciate the conversation around this. Any other correspondence or new items tonight? Okay, any committee questions?
I just have a quick statement. I just want to commend the superintendent on being able to deliberate and execute cancellation of schools while.
We've all gotten
A lot of hands behind the scenes.
I'm paying attention to maybe how the current.
Okay.
And with that, any public comments this evening? There's no one from the public here in attendance. Anyone online?
No one with their hand raised.
No.
Nope.
Excuse me, Dr. Brand, just one thing. So Thursday's meeting, the 13th, in addition to the CMR recommendation, we're also going to vote on the naming of our group. That's going to be on the agenda as well.
That'll be in the March meeting.
Yeah.
That'll be in the March meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, no, that, yeah.
Okay.
The CM at risk is the only item for that remote meeting on February the 13th.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no, thanks for the clarification. Okay, thank you for the meeting. Again, thank you to our design team and SMMA for the great work. A lot of work happening. We mentioned there's ongoing meetings next week with police and fire, as well as we continue to hone in and work with Dorian Whittier on the planning. So thank you for all of your time and energy part of the process. All of that said, looking for a motion to adjourn tonight.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Motion second. Roll call, please.
Glenn Brand,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Paul Millerani,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezo,
Yes.
Michael Camosio,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
Justin Couche,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Night, everyone.